Everyone talks about the power of data-driven instruction, but what does that actually look like? Look no further than iExcel, the ultimate online learning and teaching platform for K to 12. iExcel gives you meaningful insights that drive real progress, and research can prove it. Studies in nearly all 50 states across the US show that schools that use iExcel outperform other schools on state tests. Educators who use iExcel love that they can easily see how their schools are performing in real time to make better instructional decisions. And iExcel doesn't stop at just data. iExcel also brings an entire ecosystem of resources for your teachers with a complete curriculum, personalized learning plans, and so much more. It's no wonder that iExcel is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts. Ready to join them? Visit iexcel.com/PM to get started.
You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for another Monday Matters. Jen, I would really like to bring a topic to today's listeners based on one of your recent newsletters, which, by the way, your newsletter's Principal Problems. Every single week, I look forward to reading them. And if you're not subscribed, listeners, go to Jen's website right now at jenschwanke.com and sign up. You just wrote a post recently on tips for interviewing, and it brought back so many memories of my own. So I thought, let's just take a Monday Matters and talk about some of the thoughts you have around interviewing, some of the lessons you've learned, and I'm happy to share my own as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I got so many emails about this post, and I think it's because it's not very typical. It is not tips for interviewing as in, go in, dress a certain way, sit up straight, but, answer whatever. It's more about the mindset that we use when we go into interviews. And I said in there that it's about the ughness of interviewing. I am a terrible interviewer, Will. Terrible interviewer. The way my mind works, it's like an underground ant farm. Like there's all of this stuff going on, and it's very hard for me to speak with eloquence and clarity when I really want a job. And that's kind of the point of the newsletter that I sent out. There were three things I really wanted listeners to think about. First of all, it's not great to want it too much. If you are going into a job more frightened about what happens if you don't get it than excited about what you do, that's probably a red flag. And I've done that. The second thing that sounds like the same, but it's just a little step further, is the idea you have to be okay if you didn't get it, if you don't get it. If you get that phone call and somebody says, we've decided to go in another direction, that cannot be a pull over on the side of the road and sob and have an identity crisis. It needs to be, okay, I was ready for that. You are you, the job is the job. Those two things are not the same things. It's really important that we keep ourselves and our profession a little bit separate so that our identity isn't too wrapped up into a job that we want so badly. And then the final thing, I really, really believe this. I think about a couple of times in my life where I was buying my first house, and I badly, 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 badly wanted a house, and I didn't get it, and I was crushed. And in every situation, when you don't get a house that you put a bid on, there's a reason, and it's 10 years down the road, you're like, thank goodness that house isn't my problem right now. That's exactly the way I feel it is with jobs a lot of times. Jobs you don't get. Maybe you shouldn't have gotten them. Maybe you weren't ready. Maybe it's a job that didn't match your skill set. Maybe it wasn't advertised as what you thought it was going to be. So my takeaway there is continue to be awesome at what you do and be really patient, because the right doors will open and you just have to be ready for them. And it might not be on the timeline you think it is.
There's just so much wisdom in that post, Jen, and that's what I appreciated about it too. And I will circle back here in a minute and share some things that I've thought about when it comes to preparing for interviews, and some things if someone's listening and they're trying to think, okay, then what strategies can I use if I'm getting ready to step in to an interview, or if I'm stepping into that season, or if I'm itching for that next thing. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. But before we do, what I love about the values of what you said is, we all can construct in our minds of this vision of what we think that next thing will do to satisfy us. And in some ways, I think that's an important part of growth, an important part of like pushing yourself, stretching yourself to do what's next, um, growing your capacity to try new things. But in every one of those transitions I've made in my career, it's always been harder than I thought it would be.
Mhm.
And it's always been different from what I thought it would be. Um, and at the end of the day, you're still you when you get there. And so you still have to deal with the same either frustrations or challenges or mindsets. You never stop being yourself in those moments. Now, I will say this, there are some environments that are so toxic or
Mhm.
people are so negative that um, it is really good for you to get away from those kinds of environments because that gives you a fresh start or gives you a place where you can work without that kind of pressure. And I've experienced moving from high pressure to lower pressure situations, and that is a joy to be able to step into that. But having said that, I think that the idea of patience and recognizing that your entire identity cannot be tied up into your role or that next job acceptance or denial is just a good reminder
Right.
because, I like to say it this way to friends who are getting ready to step into that interview if they have an opportunity to do the next thing, and this may not be helpful for other people, Jen, but it's helped me. I just say, "How about instead of stepping in as a candidate in that conversation, you become a consultant?" And they'll say, "Well, what does that mean?" And I'll say, "Well, what I mean is, like, if I'm stepping into a room of people who are trying to gauge whether I'm the next best fit, if I'm just trying to win them and wow them or convince them I'm the best, then I feel like I'm selling the whole time. But if instead I am trying to help them figure out what's the solution they're looking for by filling this need or this position or this role, then we become partners in solving that problem together. And so I'm consulting them in solving that problem. And it becomes a joyful interview because now we're all moving in the same direction and they can either see if that's the kind of fit they wanted or not. And so, I don't know, maybe that's just my own mind's my own, little trick for my own mind, Jen, because 'cause I've been that guy who's left an interview and wanted to cry on the way home because I knew it didn't go well or that I wasn't gonna have that next opportunity, and those emotions are so real. So, I
Right.
don't know, what else do you wanna add to that?
Well, I wanna say thank you because you better bet that's what I'm gonna do the next time I interview. That is a wonderful little shift. Rather than I'm here to sell myself, it's, "Hey, I'm here to be part of a team. Here's some ideas I might have. How do they fit?" That's critical, and I'm just thinking about a friend, I met her for coffee last weekend. She's applying for a job she badly, badly wants, and I said to her, "Don't want it too much." I said all the things. But now I'm gonna text her and say, "Hey, what if you go in with the mindset that you're consulting with them, that you have a lot to share they might need?"
Mhm.
That it just seems a little bit, I don't know, that's kind of mind-blowing, Will, that's great.
Yeah. So I'll say a few more things because I've got a couple of posts that I'll put in the show notes. One was a post that I wrote that's just 10 little tips to remember when you're going to an interview. And then I have a second post that I wrote that was the 30 questions I could remember from the collective interviews that I had had up to that point. Cause I think at that point I'd had like 5 different interviews for the different positions I'd found. And so I just tried to write down the different kinds of questions people can anticipate. But I don't know, sometimes it's helpful to just say the basics because, this actual post I first wrote after interviewing a young teacher who bombed the interview. I mean, it was so painful to watch this talented college graduate come in and just, like, had, the big eyes in front of the headlights, and it was a team interview, and I could tell he was so nervous, and so afterwards I walked him outside and I was like, "Hey, could we just talk a little bit about how did you feel about that interview?" And he was like, "I felt like it was a disaster." And I said, "Well, um, I want to help you think about your next interview. So could I give you some tips?" And he said, "Please." And he sat down with a piece of paper and started writing things down. And so afterwards I came back and thought, maybe I should write that down. So I did. So here's what I told him. Come in with a solid resume. A one pager is better than a 8 pager, but celebrate the things you've already done well. Two, and this may not work for everybody, Jen, but this is what I do. Use a preemptive email or a phone call, some way you can outreach to anybody who you think might be in that interview process just to say, thank you for the opportunity. I'm so looking forward to meeting you. Three, research the heck out of your prospects so that you know that community, their website, their data, there's anything you can find out about them. You know how many people are on their staff, you know all the things you can research so that you feel like you have a feel for the community, even if you don't know it. 4, rehearse your introductions. So, like, actually say it out loud to yourself the first minute you want to talk about who you are so that you're not stumbling and it's not the first time you've said it. 5, play to
Mhm.
your strengths because if this is your time to shine, you're not selling, but you have to let people know what your strengths are. Otherwise,
Mhm.
why are they interviewing you? 6,
Right.
anticipate some questions ahead of time and be prepared with examples. So if they're going to ask you about extra duty assignments or managing a hard situation or classroom management, have some stories ready of when you've done that. 7, turn your failures into stepping stones. Admit if you've made mistakes in the past, but then show how that's made you stronger. 8, bring your own questions, and I'm not going to read any. I put some samples in the post. 9, rehearse what you're going to say as you leave. So that final thank you. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to whatever direction you guys go. I know you're going to make the right decision. And then 10, send a follow up email or a card, just so that you have that last touch. Um, the cool part about that story is that that same young man a few weeks later circled back because our district had another opening. And
Yeah.
he came in for a different school within my site, but I reached out to that principal and he's like, well, this guy, he nailed it, man. He just like, we just hired him. He nailed it. And I got to have him in my school part of the day because of that, because he was sharing coaching responsibility and I got to see him shine. And
Right.
so Jen, I know that, there's so many more things we could say. I just wanted to give some practical suggestions too, as people think about the stress of interviewing.
Yeah, no, that's good. I came in with the mindset stuff and you came in with the strategy stuff, so our listeners should be ready to go.
Well, here's the thing I want to say to listeners. If you are getting ready for a transition and it would be helpful to have a thought partner on the other side of you, reach out to Jen or
Mhm.
you can email either one of us. I have done this with a lot of leaders where I've set in just to set up a Zoom. We've got on the side of each other and we've just reflected together, so that I can ask questions or probe or, pry or make recommendations. If you wanted to enter a longer commitment with us and say, could you coach us before something like that? Sometimes we've done that. I'm not suggesting that that would work for everybody. And some people want to make that a formal thing and some don't. But Jen, I just want to invite people to continue to learn with us,
Mhm.
as we move forward. But thank you for that post. That was a great post. And I loved how open and transparent you are about your own emotions.
Yeah.
Um,
And failures. My
yeah,
failures. Yeah.
and failures.
Yeah.
Um, as we wrap up, I'm going to tell a vulnerable story. Okay. I didn't plan to tell this, and it makes me uncomfortable
Uh-oh.
to even remember it, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Because I want to be real with our listeners. But I remember one time when I was trying to move from AP to principal, and it eventually happened. But I had a number of interviews for other school districts where the answer wasn't yes.
Mhm.
It was not yet, or could you consider this other thing? And I remember in particular, I had a friend who had a really good job, and he's he made more money than I did. He had a nicer house than I did. He had just bought a brand new car, and I remember I was coming back from an interview where I knew no was what was getting ready to happen, and this brand new car passed me by, and I'm just looking at the one I'm driving, and I'm thinking about how much I wanted another opportunity and a promotion. And I did start crying. Like on the road, I was just like, I'm
Mhm.
so frustrated that I can't figure out like that next step for me and my family and this opportunity. And it was exactly like you said, Jen. It was a no that I'm so glad was a no.
Mhm.
Because looking back, I realized that would not have been the right fit for me. It would
Mhm.
have not have been the right fit for my family. I'm so glad that was a no. And then fast forward several years later, and I've been able to buy a nice car and all those things later that happened. You know, when you're in the moment, those the things that seem so important to you, they are important to you for the moment. And I'm not suggesting that those aren't important values, but I also just want to say, give yourself permission to think beyond the moment and realize that maybe 6 months later, maybe a year later, maybe 6, 10 years later, you're gonna look back at that moment and go, "Man, I am so glad that door closed and that door opened," because having that car, quote unquote, to me is not nearly as important as the places I got to work, the people I got to work with, the opportunities I got to be stretched and to grow. So I don't know if that helps anybody else out there, but that's
Well, and let's say too, in the moment, you don't feel that way. It
no,
takes a minute, but
yeah,
later, I mean, both jobs that I was heartbroken, absolutely shattered to not get, I am grateful every day I didn't get those jobs.
yep. All right, Principal Matters listeners, thank you for letting Jen and I go there with you today. And if you would like to check out today's post and any of the other sources that we've recommended, please go there. Jen, how can folks read this wonderful newsletter of yours?
Yep, just find me on jenschwanke.com and click to subscribe to the newsletter.
And you can check out all of our resources or subscribe to our weekly post at williamdparker.com. And Jen, I'll just remind folks that we're also now on YouTube, and Emily does a video version of our podcast as well as this audio version. So check that out. However you listen to us, we're just so glad to connect. And if you're thinking about PD for 26 and 27, Jen and I are already filling our calendars. So reach out, because we'd love to come and present to you or your teachers or your conferences, or work with you one-on-one or coach you. So sometimes I forget to say all those things, Jen, but we'd love to do that with you. So please reach out. Until next time, thanks for doing what matters. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.